Hi, I'm Cathy Tombaugh, and today I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Dawn Nickel, who has been helping women for many, many years, help themselves through many different areas of their life, including recovery. So let me tell you a little bit about Dawn. Dr. Dawn Nickel, or Mama Dawn, as she is affectionately known in the women's recovery space, is the co-founder of the She Recovers Foundation, an experienced thought leader and consultant with extensive experience in researching and writing about women experiencing substance use disorders, mental health challenges, and intimate partner violence. She is the author of the recently published book, She Recovers Every Day. This daily meditation book is not specifically about any one condition, addiction, or life challenge. This book is designed to help you contemplate and hopefully embrace the notion that you can take charge of your life and heal regardless of what you are recovering from. So welcome, Dawn. I'm really glad you're here.
Oh, it's so nice to see you.
Yeah, great. So can you tell people a little, I've read a little bit of your bio, but can you tell people a little bit more about yourself, maybe a little bit about your background for those that don't know you?
Sure. Well, I am a woman in long-term recovery from substance use disorder, intimate partner violence, anxiety, all sorts of different things. And I hit a bottom with substance use in 1987 when I was a mom of two little girls. I was in an abusive marriage, and I went to treatment and found out that there was another way to live. And I was very grateful to find that out. I think I'd probably been addicted to substances by the time I was 17, and I spent 10 years trying to moderate. I knew by 17, like, I don't think this is really for me. But I didn't know that there was another way that you could go completely substance free. So just kind of moderated, and I just was too addicted to really moderate successfully. So went to treatment, left the marriage, never drank or did cocaine again since 1987. But for the first couple of years, smoked a lot of pot. That was my harm reduction period. And then went back to treatment to get off the pot. Somebody told me the other day, pot ages you. You were supposed to say weed now. If you say pot, people know you're old. I just learned that the other day. So got off the weed.
Good to know.
And I went into 12-step recovery because there wasn't anything else at the time. I talk now about how if there's a woman has issues with an addictive disorder of any type, we tell her, listen to podcasts, go to therapy, go to yoga, do breath work, read Quit Lit, all these things. And back in 1987 and 1989, there was one message, thou shalt go to 12-step recovery, or thou shalt use drugs and die. And that may have been true for me. I'm not sure, but I believed it. So I went, and I was very, very involved in a 12-step recovery program. I still consider myself a member. 12-step recovery is where I often tell women to go if they're looking for a supportive community and a kind of a roadmap for how to begin the project of self-reflection. But since starting She Recovers, I'd say that, I'm really, that's kind of my primary recovery space now. So I don't go to a lot of meetings. I drop in once in a while. I raised my two kids, and what happened was my daughter Taryn, my youngest, ended up addicted at 16, totally followed in her mother's footsteps. And I was in recovery, so I was able to be present to her and kind of help her reassess which direction she wanted to go in. She chose recovery for a few years, and then she continued or returned to drinking alcohol and using substances, but in a much more measured way. And then we started She Recovers, and eventually she gave up all substances, probably about going on 6 years ago. So about 12 years ago, I hit the wall with workaholism, and I realized that, like my bottom with substances, my life was in tatters through overworking. My physical health was suffering. I was having panic attacks, crying jags. My relationship with my husband was not good. He had just kind of given up on even trying to get my attention because I was just always working. I was working three kind of careers at the same time. And then I started having blackouts from the stress and the burnout. And that's when I realized I needed to do something about it. So I went on an extended leave from work and really just started a new kind of level of recovery. And what I knew then was that I could depend upon some of the same tools I had earlier taken on in my recovery. So I went back to therapy, started doing more yoga. I did kind of involve myself with a 12-step recovery program called Workaholics Anonymous. I've never been to a WA meeting yet in all these years, but I really do the literature really resonates with me and I use it frequently. There's a book and a workbook. And while I was on that recovery kind of journey, that 4 month sabbatical from life, I realized that I wanted to do more in my life around recovery and especially support women in recovery. So when I did go back to work after 4 months, I had started a blog called Recovering Dawn and blogged just about every day about recovery. And then when I went back to work, realized I couldn't blog every day and work every day. So switched over to the platform Facebook, which I really didn't even have a Facebook. I barely used my Facebook account back in 2011. But Taryn suggested we start a Facebook page rather than a personal account called She Recovers. We did that. Within a year, we had hosted our first She Recovers yoga and recovery retreat. And the rest is kind of history in terms of the evolution of She Recovers. We've hosted now over 55 retreats, 3 major women's recovery conferences. We have training programs. We train coaches in our already trained coaches in our philosophy. We're about to launch our She Recovers professional designation, whereby therapists, social workers, other professionals can become affiliated, so to speak, with us. It's not affiliated though, because it's not like there's no monetary exchange with it. People can just pay for the course and then become listed on our directory, and people in our community, which is now huge, know that this person, this therapist, this coach, when I go to them, knows what She Recovers is all about, knows kind of what we stand for, and therefore the likelihood that that therapist or coach will resonate for that person is much higher. That's a lot, and I probably missed a lot, but maybe you can ask questions to fill in the holes if you have any.
Sure, no, wonderful. No, your work's amazing, and I did attend your LA event years ago, and you are just doing so much great work. And I just remember talking to some of the women around me, and they were just so appreciative of being able to come to this event. And I know you do other things too on a smaller scale, but that one was I was very impressed. So I love your slogan, we're all recovering from something and you don't have to recover alone. I've always thought that was just excellent, because even if it's not alcohol or drugs or substances or whatever, there's always something. Everybody's got some issue. So so you and Taryn started She Recovers, and maybe touch a little bit on women in recovery. How is that different, do you think, from men in recovery? I mean, do you think that women need different things than men do?
Absolutely. And I don't know that I knew that intellectually when I was myself in recovery, but what I know happened in my recovery journey, even in 12-step recovery, is I needed to see what other women were doing with their lives to know that it was possible for me to. So I needed to model. We talk about, and it's Bronfenbrenner, I believe, his theory that adolescents need one adult who kind of cares about them and thinks the world of them in order to be successful in life. And I feel like I'd love to actually, I'm going to be talking with some researchers at Harvard about doing some research on this. I think the same can be said about women in recovery. We just need one other woman, or somebody who identifies as a woman, who is doing kind of living the life that we see ourselves in. And we can make that connection. So early in my recovery and 12-step work, I hung out with the women who I saw that they were, in my view, stronger at parenting, that they had healthier relationships than I'd ever had, that they were involved in career or other passion projects that I kind of thought I might want to be involved in, something similar. And I just really looked for those models and mentors. So I think that's one piece of it. I think we want to be able to see the possibility of what our lives can be like, and we see that mirrored by other women. And then the other thing is just, we are different. I think the substance use stigma is much higher for women. We know this for a fact. As a mother, if you have a substance use disorder, you're like just a rotten, terrible mother, says society. But if you're a guy that uses the same amount or more, you're just sowing your wild oats. You're just a party animal, kind of positive connotations around it. And with regard to substances, even physiologically, they affect us differently. So we end up kind of having more severe consequences using substances that men do. Also, the likelihood that women have been traumatized, sexually assaulted, etc., is like so high in women that we have that kind of disposition towards being triggered by males. So having a separate space, having somebody, a mentor, I just think all these things kind of add up to why we see such strong, strong communities developing out there, online and in person, amongst women. We bond because we have a lot in common.
Right. No, excellent. Yeah, it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense that to have just a group of women who are on the same path with you and not have the issues with the men being part of it too, which, sometimes can help, but it's great to have this option.
Yeah, and we're not talking about going off on a night. Well, some of us do talk about
Right.
it sometimes, but mostly we're talking about like we want this and we want integration too.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit of both. So are there any big through the years, have there been any big takeaways for you and Taryn that you've experienced, or any huge successes, or, with women, or what would be something that you feel like you're proud of what that you've done? And the whole organization, I know you're proud of, but just any big
We're pretty
takeaways.
proud. You know what I'm really proud of are probably kind of the three, we have 10 intentions and guiding principles, and that's our philosophy. But I guess kind of the top three ideas that we promote and espouse and try to live, model, and are that we are all in recovery from something. So I really do think creating a space, an atmosphere, a conversation that is so inclusive. And that started off because when we did our first retreat, which was going to be for women in substance use recovery, I really wanted my two best friends to come. They've never suffered, they've never struggled with substance use. But at the time, one of them was grieving a divorce, like a terrible, terrible divorce. And the other one had been dealing with chronic illness for years and years and years. And I just felt like they will really benefit from this sacred pause retreat where we're going to do yoga and talk about our feelings. And they did. And that was kind of the beginning of, yeah, this is for everybody. And I had also thought that all through my own recovery from the very beginning. And other people in recovery may be able to kind of think about this. We think, gee, everybody needs this. Like everybody needs a place where we can tell our story, where we can open up, where we can ask for support, give support. So this idea that you can come if you're grieving a loss, you have disordered eating, an eating disorder, gambling, codependence, any of those things. I think we're really, really proud of that, and people really, women in particular, love that about our organization. The second thing is related to that. We have become known very much for promoting the fact that we have to be supported to find and follow individualized pathways and patchworks of recovery. So I'm really, really proud, not only that we're able to say, hey, recovery can look like this, like all these things, but we don't do it in a way that some do it, which is we're not 12-step, we're this 12-step bad, we good. We're an umbrella over everything. And so we say we support all pathways and criticize none. It's not to say that I myself have done critiques of 12-step recovery, but we don't in our communities, there's just no bashing. You're not allowed to bash any other program or pathway. And I'm really proud of that, because now we have a community where if somebody comes on and just starts bashing, even today, somebody, I guess, said something about AA is just, it's all old men and it's a cult and like really horrible things. And all they do is shame you there. And now our community, we used to have to go in and go, oh gosh, we have to tell this person to change their comment or take it out. And now it's the community. So one of the other women in our community said, I'm sorry you must have had a bad experience with 12-step recovery, but by you bashing it like that, you might be taking away an option for somebody who could really use it. And truthfully, you can't claim your experience is universal. I myself, she said, have had an extremely powerful and positive experience with 12-step recovery, and it saved my life. So the original poster changed her post to say something like, because somebody was posting about 12A working for them, and she said, I'm glad it works for you. It didn't work for me. And so they're, kind of monitoring each other in a way. So I'm really, really proud that not only do we promote multiple pathways, but we do so in a way that isn't othering other more traditional types of programs. And then the third thing, there's probably 100, but the third thing, and then I'll stop, is in our community, in my view, we really, really do recognize that recovery is not linear. And so we take every kind of return to use, or some people call it relapse, whatever, as just a learning and a lesson, and what can you learn from that, and try really to help people think, to embrace self-compassion and not shame for themselves. So we have a lot of women in our community who come back. About 85% of the people in our community are in substance use recovery, and then all the other things that kind of emerge either related to that or just are different than that. So when people come in and they say, oh my gosh, I had 90 days and then I smoked pot yesterday or drank yesterday, or called up my love addiction target or whatever it is, and they're just so filled with remorse, our community just jumps on them and says, hey, 90 days, let's focus on that. That is fantastic. So just this whole strength-based approach. Obviously we don't, if somebody is really, really struggling and you can tell like they're spiraling, we don't just say, hey, just pick yourself up and dust yourself off. We say, it looks like you need more intensive support. And have you thought about this? Have you thought about medication? Have you thought about treatment? All of these other things. But I just think that we have, and people in our community say all the time, the reason they're there is because there's no shame base around relapse, that it really is very much, we recognize that there's a stages of change and you are where you are. And, if you're not quite at maintenance yet, that's okay. You can just continue to learn and grow and be supported. And in my own recovery, in 12-step recovery, I remember seeing women who would relapse come back into the rooms of the program that I was in. And sometimes people shamed them, other times they didn't, but those women felt the shame anyway. And they would just go away. They felt so bad. The loathing was so bad about their relapse that they wouldn't come back, or they'd come back and then leave. And I just lost too many friends to shame. And I just really cannot, I just can't bear it. I can't bear it.
Yeah. Great concepts. No, and I totally agree with, and I know in the book too, you touch on the AA too. I work with parents, but my approach is to, if your child likes AA, if that works for them, that's great. But I think also it's wonderful to put in as many different programs as you can, and you pick and choose what works for you. So you're giving people options, and and they can, I'm sure many women, as you mentioned, do AA and she recovers, or, and it's good. And I think that more of that we need.
And one of the things we've seen, which is, I think, so fun, is in the last few years when we kind of pivoted, because we used to be, everything was in person pretty well. Plus we had a Facebook page, and a Facebook group, but really we didn't do a lot kind of virtually. And then when the pandemic hit on March 17th, we transitioned to 2 meetings a day. We've been hosting 2 meetings a day online ever since, as well as a number of weekend meetings for our different identity-based groups, BIWOC, LGBTQ+, mothers of high needs children, healthcare and allied professionals, legal professionals, Spanish-speaking women, etc. And so a lot of women kind of found recovery during the pandemic. And I love that the pandemic, what I see having happened is it just made recovery so accessible. Now you don't, if you're a mom and you're breastfeeding and you have a toddler, you don't have to get a babysitter and get dressed and get in a car and drive for 45 minutes to a meeting where you might just be petrified to walk through that door. Mm-hmm. You can breastfeed, turn on, we say you don't have to turn off your camera if you're breastfeeding. We ask people not to turn on their camera if they're eating themselves. But so I just think women kind of checked out virtual recovery, found recovery. And what I've seen in the last 3 years is then people go, well, now I want to experience this in person. And although we've started our sharing circles back up in select communities across North America, it's slow going. I mean, we don't have that many going yet. But I've seen women say, like, I want to experience this in person. I'm going to check out a 12-step meeting. And a lot of these women were like, no, the reason I've never done recovery is because I don't want to do 12-step, but now I'm doing this. And some of those women have then gone on to find women's group in their communities. And they are now the staunchest, most celebratory 12-steppers I know. And that came because they get their foundation in virtual recovery, talking about all the pathways. And then when they go to the 12-step recovery programs, they have enough confidence when people start leveling expectations on them about what their recovery might look like. They say, I don't think that's true. I think there's only one requirement for me being here. And they've learned that through hearing us talk about those things. I wrote a blog post that went viral a few years ago called Dear Women in 12-Step Programs. That's written to women in 12-step programs to talk about how we can do better to make 12-step recovery more welcoming for women. Like, don't ask a mom who's breastfeeding on welfare with no car and a couple of other kids to go to 90 minutes in 90 days. It's not reasonable. So, yeah, I've seen so many miracles, I think. And I think the pandemic, as distraught as it made so many people, and we lost so many people. My dad passed away from COVID.
Mm.
It's just been, it's kind of been a gift to a lot of women in recovery in terms of them being able to access and understand and learn a little bit more about another way to live.
Right. No, that's excellent. Excellent. So you recently wrote your wonderful book, She Recovers Every Day, and you cover many different topics in your book. So I wanted to share a little bit. I was looking through, I've been reading it up until now, and then April, I thought, I'm just going to go through and see some of the different topics, because I like that. It's like every day you open up like, oh, what's Dawn going to talk about today? Because you have different things that you bring in. So
Do you know there's an index?
No, it wasn't in it. Oh, there you go.
There's an index. I didn't know that
Perfect.
until I'd had the book for a week.
I know. I don't think I even knew that at all. I was just going through. So perfect. Thank you. But things like recovery, self-care, clutter, simple things, what we inherit, second chances. I'm just going to list a few of these: belongings, things left to do, self-validation, embracing confusion, releasing our shortcomings, blooming in recovery. So all different aspects of it, which I thought was, which I think is really helpful and just gives you really some thinking tools, just you bring a topic in and it just gives you something to think about. So please tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it. What do you want your readers to take away from it? And, how it can help, you think. And it's for women, obviously, or people that identify as women.
It is. She works, and
There
it's
it is.
little. It's one of the Hazelden series. So the reason I didn't want to write it, actually. I wanted to write another book. I wanted to write a book that I have been writing for years. And Hazelden approached me. So Hazelden Betty Ford, this is something, they've got something like 42 meditation books.
Okay.
And this is the newest. And so Karen Casey is a very prolific recovery writer, and she wrote a book 40 years ago called Each Day a New Beginning. And this was a meditation book that that I still have. I even have the 40th anniversary edition now. But it was something that I was always drawn to early in my recovery. I was told I have to read the literature. And like, I was in a program called, I am in a program called Narcotics Anonymous. So in AA, you have the big book. In NA, we had the basic text. And, the basic text is great. It's wonderful. It's a great foundational book. And I know people love the big book, but I was like, I just want something different. So somebody, I think even in treatment, recommended a daily reader, and this was a daily reader. So I loved the idea of just checking in once a day in the morning as part of my routine, part of my practice, just thinking about recovery. It ties me to my recovery in the morning. And in more recent years, when I hit the wall with workaholism, my daughters, bless them, bought me a beautiful book by Ann Wilson Schaaf called Meditations for Women Who Do Too Much. And I've read that book every day almost since. And it's funny because every year I'm like, I don't remember reading this 10 times in the last 10 years. So I loved the practice of it. And when Hazel and Betty Ford is a great partner to She Recovers. We do lots of things together. We've started hosting professional symposiums before our big conferences. So in Miami, we did a 1-day 6 CEU professional symposium, and then did She Recovers in Miami. And then at the end of September, we're doing our second annual symposium with them, and then our She Recovers in Chicago conference. And so I just knew them, and I was on a meeting with one of the people that I've been collaborating with on different projects for years. And she said, your name came up in Hazelden Publishing the other day, and can you talk to our acquisitions editor? And I did. And I said, I'd love to. And I said, I did. And I spoke with Andrea Lean, the acquisitions editor. And I said, I have a proposal. I've got, part of this book. I'd love to talk about Hazelden Publishing. And she said, whoa, wait. She said, we'd love to talk about that too. But right now we want to invite you to consider writing a daily meditation book for women. And the reason was Karen Casey's book was turning 40. But they thought it would be a great timing for someone to write something that was not just about alcohol, which Karen's work primarily is about alcohol originally, and not just about 12 steps. So kind of a modernized version. And paid us a great compliment and said that they saw She Recovers really as kind of being the pinnacle of the modernized women's recovery movement. Mm-hmm. So I said, oh my gosh, that means I have to write 365 things. And she laughed and she said, well, 366, because we have to include leap year. And I thought about it and I thought, I can riff on recovery all day long, every day. So surely to heavens, I can kind of compartmentalize and get it down to one topic per day. So I opened up a spreadsheet and I just started throwing in topics. And when I ran out of my own ideas, I went back to all of the meditation books and other recovery books, and I looked at chapter headings and other ideas like that. And I came up with a spreadsheet of about 400 topics. And then I just sat down and started typing them up.
Mm-hmm.
And this sounds so insane, but it wasn't effortless, but I did it with a lot of ease. I was working because I work full time I work almost full time as a consultant. She Recovers is something that I do on top of my consulting work. And then I had this project as well. And I started it in November 2020, no, November 2021. And I submitted the manuscript in July. And I really didn't get much done in November and December. So it was really about 6 months of part-time work. So I did it with great ease. And I think that's just because I have so darn much to say about recovery. I wanted it. I love my cover. My dad was so proud of me for doing this.
Yeah.
And my dad was 91. He passed away in October from COVID. And he was so proud of this book. And I really wished that he could have hung around long enough to have it in his hands. But I'm grateful he did get to see the cover, and he lived long enough to leave a list of 10 people in our family that he really wanted to buy books for. And we joke now because, of course, he died. The book came out in February, and I've got to pay for those 10 books for those 10 people. But, a person's dying wish, you kind of have to do it.
Sure. Yeah. No, your cover is great too. I really like it. I like the leaf, the green and the leaves and stuff. Yeah, it's wonderful. No, I highly recommend it. I really am enjoying it myself too right now. So, so what final thoughts do you have for women seeking recovery, especially those new to this, just realizing that there's an issue here and they need some help?
Yeah. Well, can I read something?
Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
Let me see if I can remember what it is. I kind of like to speak specifically to people who are struggling. And again, this isn't just struggling with substance use. You've been reading the book, so it really isn't about substance use,
Right?
Really at all, right? There's obviously references to it, but it's about life. It's about recovering from life, all those things. While I look for this, I want to tell you that I'm excited to speak with you one day soon about our newest initiative at She Recovers, which is called She Recovers, the Next Generation.
Okay.
And it's a passion project that Taryn's had in her heart since we started She Recovers. But we're currently searching for grant funding and support donations to launch a program that's specifically for women 18 to 35. So really, really, recognizing the mental health crisis in younger women these days, there's just such a need for it. So maybe in a month or so, or a couple of months down the road, I can talk to you more about that, because I know you support moms.
Yeah.
So this one is called She. It's from July 13th.
Okay.
And this is how I feel about the women that I meet in our circles, whether that's a sharing circle online or in person at one of our monthly or weekly sharing circles, or on retreat, or wherever we meet them. So it's called She. When she came into our circle for the first time, she was overcome with feelings, some familiar, others new. She came to us knowing that she was missing something in her life, but lacking clarity on what exactly that was. She only knew that her loneliness was growing, and she felt sad and a little bit afraid a lot of the time. She longed, truly longed, for something that she couldn't even name, something that she knew was both inside of and beyond herself. When she first sat in our circle, she felt immediate anxiety as she heard others talk, because even though we assured her that she didn't have to share, she knew she needed to. And the thought of having to speak the truth aloud terrified her. She felt amazement as others shared pieces of themselves that she sensed fit exactly into pieces of herself, pieces that she had forgotten about for so long. And she felt hope. Hope that somehow she could find and share the words when the time was right for her, and they would be received in the same way as she was receiving others. Respectfully, humbly, gratefully. She hoped that she could be a part of whatever it was that was happening in that circle of women. She didn't know that she already was. She Recovers. And what I love about that reading is I think about the moms in our community who have come because their children are struggling or they've lost a child. I think about the women who have come because they're still recovering from childhood trauma, adult children of alcohol, all kind of the childhood stuff. And that's really their thing. They're not necessarily acting out with substances or even other behaviors. They just feel this great big huge hole in their heart. And so yeah, I wrote that for all of us.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I know it's always that first step, showing up to that first group meeting. So Dawn, thank you so much. Where can people learn more about you and your work and finding out more about She Recovers, your book, all the wonderful things you're doing?
For sure. Two websites, www.dawnnickel.com, which is where you'll find out about my book. 20% of the proceeds do go to the foundation. You'll also find out about the foundation. There's a link to the She Recovers website on my website as well. But everything that we're doing with She Recovers right now, including access to our daily meetings, registration for She Recovers in Chicago, will be found on www.sherecovers.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit charity. So
wonderful. Okay, and I will definitely have these both listed beneath the video, and I do a little write up on my blog, so they'll get it there too. So perfect. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for all the work you're doing. No, it's really phenomenal. I mean, I remember interacting with you or knowing that what you were doing probably 8, 10, right at the beginning, and just watching you grow. Yeah. It's just been amazing. So you're helping so many people for sure.
Well, it's a co-creation for sure. Taryn and I always say we had this idea once.
Yes.
And we kind of laid it down and people rallied and picked it up. So for sure, it's definitely been a co-creation, and we're very, very proud of everybody and everything that the foundation is doing.
Mm-hmm. And I love too the thing, that she's a yoga instructor, correct? And so people can bring that in, and it's
trauma-informed yoga. She teaches now.
Perfect.
She teaches people to become She Recovers trauma-informed yoga teachers. So important for yoga.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And, so great for all the things that you're doing.
Well, same to you. Thank you.